Welcome to episode 11, I believe it is, of Pocket Edition, and today I'm joined by Max, the head of the review team, and Wesley, who, well, he's a bit of a floater here at GameCast at the moment. He dabbles in a lot of our content, but he's also the head and owner of Early Access Gaming. What's going on, guys?
Hey, dude, not much.
Hello. Yeah, not much.
Good. What have we been up to?
Oh man, what have I been playing this week? Not much. This week has been mostly dedicated to writing. No, I got in some Rocket League and some Halo 5 time the other day because Halo 5 is doing a Halo 3 throwback playlist, actually.
Oh, no way. I just reinstalled that.
Dude, it's amazing. It's the exact same movement. Everything is the same. It's really, really weird. There's no sprinting, there's no clamoring, none of that. There's remade maps. Like my first ever game was Oddball on Guardian. Like, that was my first match, and it was amazing. The assault rifles, shit again. The BR is still like the Halo 5 BR. Like, the BR fucking wrecks.
Yeah.
But, like, everything else is the same. It's amazing.
We'll have to add each other on Xbox Live after.
Yes, definitely.
Nice. Wesley, what have you been up to, man?
So, after the Destiny craze...
That's ended? That's over already?
Well, and Max and I had a big conversation about this.
Oh, no.
Yeah, Destiny has been retooled more for casual players, which is great. And someone like me, who has many, many hours in Destiny, is looking for something a little more grindy, a little more long-term. So, now that I've gotten everything in Destiny, after about 3 weeks, I have moved over to Warframe.
Warframe? No shit.
Yeah. I did not realize the depth of that game until I started getting into it. You know, we were playing the downtime before Destiny, and then, you know, the big craze, and then we kind of migrated back over to Warframe. So
now, didn't Warframe recently kind of go through a bit of a soft reboot or re-release? Like, they transitioned from that game from being like a single-player FPS to some kind of MMO FPS or something like that. What's the story behind that?
Cool.
So we were talking about this last night. DE is the developer, and they had a game on 360, Xbox 360, called Dark Sector.
Yeah.
And it did not do very well. It was kind of like a modern day detective, and his arm turned into this giant throwing star thing, kind of sci-fi. But anyway, I think after that not so great success, they went back to the drawing board and they come out with what is now Warframe. And Warframe has went through a lot of changes in the past 4 years. They had a big update like the first of the summer, and they tuned a bunch of things. And that's whenever we started playing, or I started playing for the first time. Yeah, it hooked me. It roped me in. And now they delayed their next update, which was supposed to come out last week. But they said they need more time to work on it. But it's going to be a full-blown like sandbox public space where it's kind of open world, similar to what Destiny does with the different planets.
That is a drastic change. Yeah, that's a massive change.
That's really interesting.
When I remember it, it was like an arena shooter. So the fact that it's going open world, that's massive. That's huge.
It still has all of that. They're adding on the open world, like, is more of end game content.
In addition.
Yeah, right. That sounds really cool. I'm gonna have to check it out. Is it free to play?
Yes.
Ooh.
Free? Yes, it's free to play, and you can do everything in the game. There's more grinding, of course. I think it's more pay to hurry up, or pay to go faster.
That's a nice way of putting it. Pay to hurry up.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of paying to hurry up, are there any microtransactions that we need to worry about?
Warframe has microtransactions at every corner. However, if you don't want to pay, you don't have to. Everything is available in-game.
Very good.
Honestly, we could do an entire podcast about how Warframe is probably the greatest developed free-to-play game of all time. Their development is very, very interesting. It's very dynamic, and the way that they handle microtransactions is nothing short of incredible. I could send you an article on it too.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely pick that up. Why don't you lead us into what we're talking about today then, which is actually microtransaction related.
Okay, so on the most recent episode of the newscast, Snowy and Vox and I were discussing the Shadow of War microtransactions, right? And we got, of course, because it was snowy and we like to argue, we got to the talk of the necessity of microtransactions, right? And I brought up in Microtransactions defense, I brought up an article I read about Fortnite's probably almost a month ago now, maybe 3 weeks ago, and it was Epic Games basically defending microtransactions being done right, which Snowy actually says, yeah, there's a right way to do them. He doesn't hate them entirely. And we kind of got to talking about how games cost hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to make nowadays, if not millions, right? And people like Epic Games, where they're self-publishing and everything, they need to make that money back somehow, you know? Even if everyone's buying like a $40 game, $60 game, they still have to sell a metric fuck ton of copies to make that money back, no?
Mm.
So, Snowy just very casually mentioned, he's like, well, why don't we just raise the price of games instead of putting in microtransactions? And I kind of sat there. I was like, that's brilliant, actually. Maybe. That's a brilliant like idea to discuss. Brilliant idea for Pocket Edition, because while that seems like an easy solution, I feel like people would get pissed at that.
Well, I think people would get pissed, but like anything else, I think people would also get over it. But my one hang up with this is once people actually do get over the price hike, how many fewer copies would a game sell because people simply can't afford that extra $10 to $15 or $20 or whatever the increase of the game might be?
Mm-hmm. I guess that's kind of my thing as well, because the thing is right now, games are still $60, and a lot of people, as annoying as microtransactions are, like, but myself included, a lot of people, they just kind of ignore them to a degree, which is ignoring the problem and allowing the problem to happen. So you could argue if you care about gaming, you should be actively fighting this.
I think, in my unprofessional opinion, the reason why microtransactions exist today and why I don't think they're going anywhere is go back to 2012, 2014, when the cell phone, as we know it today, the smartphone, as we know it today, came out. So, Android and Apple, they had a new device, and it was amazing. It did all this stuff, and they had a new platform for games. And the problem was, okay, I just paid anywhere between $200 and $800 for a phone. Why do I want to pay more money to have something else on it? And the game culture evolved into, well, people aren't willing to pay for games. But if we give them away, to demo the phone's capability or just to get people playing them, then people will play the game. And then how do we monetize that? Okay, now that we've got you playing the game, it's like the Skinner box, right? So now you're invested. So now you keep whatever, rolling the wheel or spinning the thing or whatever. Now people will pay. And I was reading a study with games that you pay for straight up, just buy them and play them, versus microtransaction games. And I think the average was like $2.50 per game, like $2.50 per game for a pay game. And then they were doing like $2.75 average a game for microtransactions.
Wow. Yeah, people don't treat apps as games, or like they don't see them as worth buying.
So I was going to say, I think there's a model there for free-to-play that you're right, it sprung up from the mobile space, but I think the video game industry recognized that model as a way to capture a larger portion of the audience, being the casual audience. I think that's why we do get a lot of free-to-play games which are geared towards capturing, outside of the hardcore gamer demographic.
And that's where I was going with that.
Yeah.
I think that they saw how successful, the console and PC game industry saw how successful the pay microtransaction model was, so they started to incorporate that. I know Call of Duty was one of the first games I remember. It had, buy a skin for your gun, and I'm like, a skin for why would I buy a skin for my gun? But then, it was something to have, and you looked cool, and I did pay for Snoop Dogg's voiceover. That was amazing. Best $2 I ever spent in my life.
Do you guys think, though, there's a connection between this free-to-play model and microtransactions, though? Because in my eyes, I think games as services tend to have, these microtransaction models baked into them more. Now, do you think, to get back to our original question of should we just raise the price of games, do you think we need to, or do you think we go into a game as a service type thing like Destiny 2 or Fortnite, knowing that, we buy this one kind of buy-in and it's going to be a very long game with a lot of legs, and there's going to be microtransactions rolled into it. It's going to be a lot of optional content. Do you think that's fair? Or do you think we should just raise the price of that service title and just cut away all that crap?
We may raise the price of games, or the developers may raise price of the games. Actually, that'd be the publisher. But microtransactions are here to stay, in my opinion, because GTA Online has proven you can charge full price for a game and make a shit ton of money off of microtransactions.
No, great.
That game is still around, and it hasn't changed much, and they're still selling stuff.
I don't disagree with that. My thing is that I feel like microtransactions are still ruining some triple. Yeah, like yes, they're done right in some cases and they're done wrong in others. I feel like Gears of War 4 was very very neutered by the inclusion of microtransactions. I feel like it kind of changes the way designers or game developers look at games because they're designing a lot of their multiplayer around these types of microtransactions. Like I use Halo 5 as a good example of microtransactions being done very well. Because what they did was that they have the original arena gameplay like Halo 3's did and Halo 2 and all the original ones to cater to hardcore fans like myself. Microtransactions don't touch that aside from aesthetics and boosts like XP boosts. There is nothing changes the way the game plays in the slightest. And then they still have the Warzone mode where microtransactions end up coming in. Now, the Warzone mode, there's no guns that drop at all. You can only get guns and vehicles and stuff by opening up these packs that you can end up buying with points that you win from matches anyways. You don't even have to spend real money on them. And you get these packs pretty frequently, right? Which is great. And I do think that in order to make this better, they could have made guns and vehicles drop in Warzone. But regardless, these microtransactions are almost non-essential. The only time I spent money on the game is because the money goes into fueling the free DLC and fueling like the Halo Championships. And I wanted a cool skin, so I spent $10 so I can contribute to the prize pool for the Halo Championship, as well as just get some cool stuff. You know what I mean? I feel like they did it right because there is no, you can get them enough just by playing in game. Like you can get a rec pack like every 2 or 3 matches, which I think is entirely viable, especially if you're playing ranked. If you're playing like the Halo, like the core Halo 5 arena, you're going to get a bunch of rec packs and you're not even going to be using the stuff until you go jump into Warzone much later. So you're kind of piling these up anyways by playing. And then in Warzone, you're also getting a bunch of rec points and able to buy these kits. I feel like when done that way, yeah, microtransactions can be great because they can lead to a lot of good. But then there's like cases like Shadow of War where I feel like that's more the publisher just taking advantage of things. Or even like the Facebook free-to-play games that kind of started a lot of this, like what we were talking about earlier. You know, like Farmville, you have to suddenly wait 2 days to progress, or you could spend like $2 to progress. And I get that the game is free, but I feel like games designed around microtransactions, that's an issue that is only going to get worse if we don't address it.
I think Kaut and I touched on this once upon a time before that it probably will get worse before it gets better. You know, someone eventually is going to go 10 feet too far over the line and they're going to get pulled up for it. And that's going to be the end of the story. You know, I think the issue is there's no definitive model for free-to-play, games as services, or microtransactions. So everybody is pulling, you know, different ways with how they want to employ the model. I want to open up one last question for you guys. Let's hypothetically say that, you know, we did increase the cost of games. And just to put it out there, I don't actually think we can do that anyway, because there is no defining body or industry watchdog that says, okay, well, now we're increasing all the games by $15.
Well, if one person does it, someone else, people will follow. Let's
get to the hypothetical now. Let's say we did actually manage to achieve this. All games from now on are $89. Who's to say that the price of games are increased and microtransactions start to trickle their way back in?
Yep.
That's going to happen because they're greedy. It's about profit.
Well, I guess that's my worry because I know you're saying there's no defining body that will raise game prices. And while I agree with that, I'm just looking at, honestly, the idea of microtransactions in and of itself, that started to bleed into games over time, or like season passes and the service-based game. You know, if the thing is, if it works, I feel like people will follow. So if Microsoft does do that, say they make Halo 6 $80 or $70 instead of $60 US pricing. I know I'd still be buying Halo 6 unless it turns out to be an entire shit show. And I know I'm not the only one there because I love Halo and Microsoft is taking advantage of them letting them. I mean, maybe I wouldn't. That's just a hypothetical, but like, you know.
Take my money.
Here's my point. The point that I see from a publisher perspective is even if you raise the game, let's say $20, any game, pick a game, $20, they would be losing money.
Yes.
If they did away with microtransaction, because if we look at the industry today, they're not going that direction. They're going the opposite direction. we're seeing more and more free-to-play games because, on average, you can make more money from microtransactions.
Yeah, I think that's why it's not going to happen as well, because if you show to them that they can make more money, like you said earlier, Wesley, if you show to them, all right, you can make more money by just increasing the cost of the game, getting rid of microtransactions, we'd probably already be there. You know, as far as I'm concerned, there's almost an unlimited amount of money that can be made from a singular title with microtransactions. You know, it's all about building that hook. How addictive can they make the game? Which is when you kind of start talking about microtransactions and games as services being impacted negatively by, you know, influencing the game development process. That's the real concern for me. That's when that just goes way too far.
And you guys were talking earlier about saying it's going to get worse before it gets better. Well, G2A, remember, they introduced like microtransactions and a roulette just in buying games. Like, this is starting to move outside of games. This is starting to become a thing like on Steam. Imagine if on Steam there was a kit that you bought that, well, I guess Humble Bundle is a similar thing. Humble Bundle is you have randomized chances of getting games.
All right, so do you guys have any final thoughts on this topic?
Microtransactions are here to stay. Sorry, Count.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's not as simple as raising the price of games because, like we said, who's going to pull the trigger on that? You know, and at the same time, like we said before, again, there's more money to be made in microtransactions, and that's what the industry is about. It's about money. It's like every industry. Where can they make the most money?
I guess I just thought of this really quickly.
God damn it, Max. We're trying to wrap it up.
I'm sorry. I know, I'm sorry, but it's important. I mean, feel free to shit on it, but people buy season passes alongside games and they're $80. Like, they drop $80 on a game right now. Like, people do that a lot now that I think about it.
And sometimes the DLC doesn't even drop. They're like, oh, we didn't finish the third. You know, like the third DLC, it doesn't even come out. Or it's like 2 years later.
Yep, exactly. Halo 5 model or Rocket League model. Best way.
Yeah, that's
Warframe.
very true.
Warframe. We need to do
Warframe
that combo on Warframe, yeah.
All right, so stay tuned for that discussion coming up in the coming week or so with Max and Wesley. Be sure to leave a rate, comment, and subscribe. And if you've liked Max, myself, or Wesley in particular, you can find our links down below in the description, and you can also find them on the GameCast YouTube channel, where you also find a variety of other gaming content in the form of news, reviews, podcasts, and other little bits and pieces of fun gaming-related content there as well. But until the next episode, guys, have a good one.